Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback, covering the league for almost 20 years. All right, Cardinals hired a defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon. Yep. J-Mac doesn't love that move. It feels like it's the 13th choice. I don't know. He didn't have a very good Super Bowl.
It actually isn't, Colin. And I'd remind people that Kyle Shanahan didn't have a great Super Bowl in his last game as an Atlanta assistant either. I think that's turned out pretty well for the Niners. So, this is really a guy who was quietly a front runner for the job all along. From the minute, at least, that Monty Ossenfort became the GM. He and Ossenfort have a relationship. They've gotten to know each other over the last year. Ossenfort sees Gannon as having an it factor needed in a head coach and a real plan for what he's going to do when he becomes a head coach. And the problem for Arizona was they couldn't talk to him before now because of the way the rules are. Over the first week, there was the window to talk to the Eagles assistants. Ossenfort didn't get fired until the second week post-regular season. So by the time that Ossenfort got that job, they couldn't talk to Gannon. That also made it so they couldn't talk to him during the Super Bowl bye week. The rules are those have to be second interviews. So this is the first chance they had to get to him. And that's why they dragged their feet over the last couple of weeks. That's why they were so slow over the last couple of weeks. They had an idea that Gannon was going to be the guy. They wanted to wait for him, and now they have their man.
All right, so Derek Carr, today's the day. I can feel it in my bones. He's going to Carolina. I think it works. I think Frank fits. It feels right. Tell me I'm wrong.
It makes some sense. Now I can tell you they hadn't talked to the Raiders about him. There are only two teams that have actually talked to the Raiders about trading for Derek Carr. One made an offer. That was the Saints. And the Saints were able to kind of reach preliminary trade parameters, which was what allowed them to speak to Carr. And the Raiders obviously gave Carr permission to do that. And then the Jets inquired, but that didn't go very far. So the interest on the trade market is at least tepid. Now I'd warn people that doesn't mean that nobody wants him. That is because his contract is very difficult to move with the $32.9 million that would become guaranteed for this year, and then the $7.5 million that'd be guaranteed for 2024. When you put him out there on the free agent market, that's something totally different. We're obviously a month out from the rest of the crowd in free agency. And so Carr's got a little bit of an edge here in that he's got a head start on everybody else. I think the Saints will double back and be involved here. I think the Jets will inquire. I'm just not sure that they would go all in on Carr right now with the Aaron Rodgers thing still out there. And yeah, I mean, I think that, you look at the other teams in the NFC South, you look at Tampa, you look at Carolina, those are two more teams that I think will at least look into it over the course of the next few days.
Okay, Aaron's darkness retreat. I see multiple stories. Green Bay's kind of willing to work with Aaron and move on. I don't care much. You do whatever you want with your life. Meditation, I really couldn't care less. But I do think Mark Murphy coming out and saying, we'd like an answer sooner than later, feels like, come on, you can't go to the retreat, come out and not have an answer. And Aaron's saying, well, I'll get closer to the answer. So I would be impatient too. Yeah. Where does it stand?
I think that's sort of indicative of where they are though, Colin, right? Like last year, the year before that, they were take all the time you want. You don't want to show up to the offseason program, that's fine. They were all in on trying to get him back and making sure that he was going to be a Packer again. I just think they're sort of at the point now where they feel like they're at the end of the line with this. And they got to make a decision on Jordan Love in May. And, I think at this point, they're more comfortable with Jordan Love. Last year, they were really worried about where Jordan Love was. Sure. I think now they feel a little bit better about where Jordan Love is. And could they pick up that option and go forward with him for at least the next 2 years? I think they're more comfortable with the idea of that. Look, like there's $60 million coming, so if a guy's not all in, it's tough to cut that check. So the Packers are in a much, much different place than they were the last 2 years in being more comfortable with Love and then in being more comfortable with the idea of trading Rodgers. And you also look at where they are from a roster standpoint, some big decisions they're going to have to make. Alleviating some of the cap issues, I think, over the next couple of years would really help them continue to build what's a really good roster. So, I think that the headline here, Colin, wouldn't be so much Mark Murphy saying, hey, get on your horse and make a decision. I think more so it's just the overall difference in approach here that the Packers have taken, where they're so open to the idea of moving Rodgers. And they're also asking him for an answer where the last couple of years they told him to take all the time he needed.
Jalen Hurts, I mean, they could lose. If Lane Johnson retired and Kelsey, it's a different O-line. They got like 11, both their leading tacklers at linebacker free agents. They're not bringing all these guys back if they paid Jalen. So it's going to be the D-line. Fletcher Cox, my guess is Kelsey and Fletcher Cox would retire. Great careers, a lot of money. Is there, and they lose their play caller.
I mean, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave. They've got a lot of names out there.
Who are you most sure they lose? Who do you think for sure is done?
I think there's a decent chance Brandon Graham's done. I think Kelsey's really going to mull it. I'm not sure one way or another what he does, but I think there's a good chance that he walks away. I think Fletcher Cox could wind up playing somewhere else next year.
Yeah.
And, that really breaks up what's a unique thing there, Colin. And this is something all their coaches were aware of, but I know a lot of people in the general public aren't, which is they had 2 offensive linemen and 2 defensive linemen this year on their roster that had been on the team for over 10 years. That's got to be borderline unprecedented. And for a team that was so built through the lines of scrimmage, those guys really made up their identity. And so losing those guys is a very big deal. And then you go to the coaching staff, and I know you didn't ask about the coaching staff, but now they're going to lose both their coordinators. I think they'll lose either Brian Johnson or Kevin Petula. One will probably stay as their offensive coordinator, but that's 2 more bright young assistants. This mix that they had the last couple of years that was so special, and such a close coaching staff and such a close locker room and an operation that was really moving in lockstep. Yeah, the balance of all of that's going to be upset now.
Yep.
So there's obviously a big job in front of Nick Sirianni now. And I'd say there's a big job in front of Jalen Hurts too, because he's going to be thrust in a position of leadership, depending on who they lose in that locker room that, he hasn't filled over the first 3 years of his career. I think he's plenty capable, but it's obviously a different role.
Listen, there is a narrative that the Chicago Bears offensive line is terrible. PFF has it at 14. Justin Fields, Andrew Luck, Joe Burrow, with significantly worse protection, won immediately. Justin Fields, 2 years in, touchdowns to interceptions, passer rating, completion. It's bad. Better than average running backs, very solid tight end. Yes, they need more weapons on the outside. Mm-hmm. But I said this earlier. They didn't draft him. I could absolutely see them saying, guys, Atlanta will give us their 8th pick for him. I can because Atlanta right now is on the outside looking in for quarterbacks. And and my takeaway is I'm Chicago. I'm like, you have Justin. We'll go get Bryce Young. I don't think it's crazy.
So I think you have to look at this from a 2-year perspective, right?
Okay.
Like, do you trade Justin Fields now based on what he means in that locker room, his makeup? I think he's got a lot of the same things Jalen Hurts had, just from a personality standpoint and his work ethic and willingness to improve and, the amount of time he's going to put into everything. So he has some of the things that Hurts had that made Hurts better in areas that, quite frankly, quarterbacks generally don't get better in. So, do you give up on him now and draft Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or Will Levis? Or do you trade the first pick, take the bounty of picks, see what you can put around him, take 1 more year with Justin Fields, and then if it doesn't work, you may have a better quarterback class waiting for you next year with Caleb Williams in the mix, with Drake May in the mix, and a number of other guys who've shown a lot of promise. There are a lot of teams, Colin, and I know we do this a lot. This happens a lot this time of year. There are a lot of teams that feel like Caleb Williams and Drake May will be the first 2 quarterbacks to go in this year's class.
Yes, I've been told that.
So if you're the Bears, I think you have to look at this and say to yourself, this isn't our only shot at replacing Justin Fields. We didn't draft him, but we like a lot of things about what he did this year. And he just went through a coaching staff overhaul. And does it make more sense to just give him 1 more year, knowing that if it doesn't work, there could be a generational quarterback class on the other side of this? I think that's the way the Bears are looking at this versus the idea of what could we get for Justin Fields and do we go all in and what could be a little bit of a flawed class of quarterbacks this year.
All right, that's good. I like that take. That's a pretty good take. J-Mac, what do you think of that? I don't know.
I need J-Mac's approval on this. What do you think, J-Mac?
It was good to hang out with Breer at the Super Bowl, obviously.
My wife and J-Mac, I need their approval. I need their validation or nothing cooks. All right, Albert Breer, that's good stuff. Monday Morning Quarterback. Appreciate it, bud. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.